And we are live. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I'm Neal Ronaghan, the director of NintendoWorldReport.com and the host of this lovely show, Nintendo World Rapport. And with me today is Adam Rippon, right? Is that how I'm... Is that how you
Rippon.
say your last name? It's nothing more complicated than just Rippon.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah.
All right, cool.
There's lots of different ways people pronounce it, and I don't care. It's
Yeah,
all great.
that's a great thing. My last name's Ronaghan, and there's a G in that, and people always love pronouncing the G. And I've gotten to a point where, like, when I was younger, I would get all up in arms about it. And at this point, I'm just like, I don't know. Just say it however you want. People will know who I am.
Yep.
Like, I'm not worried about being anal about pronunciation.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Adam, you are from Choice Provisions and Muteki Corporation, and you had a game come out on Nintendo platforms just a few weeks ago, Dragon Fantasy, the Volumes of Westeria. That was also originally it was originally on mobile devices, then it was on PS3 and Vita, and now it's pretty much on like everything.
Yeah, I'm very quickly approaching the everything stage with the first game.
Because it hasn't. Because I know is it already out on Xbox One, or is that still forthcoming?
The only thing it's not out on right now, that's a current system anyway, is the Xbox One, and it's definitely on my mind. You know, there's business stuff to be done for that sort of thing, but you know, I would love to bring it to Xbox One also. I know my friend Joe keeps like yelling at me for it, really wants it there.
So what are the origins of Dragon Fantasy? Because I know that you've been working on it for like forever. Like, how did you?
Yeah.
Where did the idea first kind of come from?
Well, I mean, I've been working on the game technically. If you want to get super precise, I've been working on it for almost 21 years now.
That means we're looking like 94.
94, exactly.
You played like Final Fantasy 3 or something, and we're just like, well, I could do that too.
Exactly, and so I played, you know, Final Fantasy 3, and I played Final Fantasy 2, and then I found out there was Final Fantasy 5 in Japan, and the numbering and all that jazz, blah blah blah. But I worked on fan translation. Briefly.
Really? That's awesome. I think I played that fan translation. So thanks.
Probably did. Yeah, I did the. I don't really speak any. Well, I speak a little Japanese, but I dropped out of college. But I worked on ROM hacking tools for it, and you know, the at least the first third of the game, the script for it was all inserted with my tools, and so I did that a little bit as a kid, and eventually I ran out of RPGs to translate, and I needed to make my own. So I started designing a game that was all the best parts of Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger and Secret of Mana 2, and as it turns out, a 14-year-old kid living in Montana working by himself was not able to pull that off. And I think actually some of those games came out after I started working on it and made it, you know, pile up over the years. Because originally I just wanted to make my own, like, Final Fantasy 2-ish game. And honestly, Dragon Quest wasn't even a huge part of my initial inspiration, because I didn't get really into those games until you know, around 2000 when Dragon Quest VII came out.
Yeah, because it was weird with Dragon Quest, because I think there was a huge push with the first one on NES that I guess that was like 1990, and then it was kind of always there. I mean, it was huge in Japan, but it never really had that big push in America. Really. Yeah. Not really. Like, I mean, you'd have like the PS1 one, Dragon Quest VII got kind of a big push. With 9, there was kind of a big push, and hopefully with 11, we'll see another one. But it's been like stagnant.
Yeah. I was really into Dragon Warrior 4 when I was a kid, and I'd go over to my friend Andrew Lester's house, and we played in his basement. Andrew Lester being the namesake of Anders Wester in the game. Which, so all the people who were like, oh, Westeria. It's a Westeros ripoff. No, it's not.
Like you had
George
that
R. R.
idea
Martin
probably
over
before
me.
George R. R. Martin.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was actually thinking that when I saw especially with the new name for book one, I was just like, wait, that does kind of look like Game of Thronesy, but I guess you might have come first.
The character Ramona in the game was originally named Arya, and I was just like, nope, no, gonna just change it. Not gonna work. So I named her after my friend Mary's daughter, who's like 8 now.
So you grew up. Were you born and raised in Montana?
I actually was born in Montana. Then my parents moved around a bit for 10 years or so, and then I ended up back in Montana, where most of my formative years were spent. And Missoula specifically, it's this college town.
That's like a town in Montana that I've heard of. So that's probably like one of 3 towns in Montana that I've heard of. So I'm an East Coast boy, so all those talks of how big Montana is, I'm like, I don't know. That's probably what, like half of the Eastern Seaboard into one state, something like that.
Yeah, it's a big place, and there's not a lot going on in it most of the time.
So then, so you're working.
Great place.
So, go ahead. So you're working on the original plans for Dragon Fantasy. You growing up in Montana. Then how did you kind of, I guess, get into the games industry from there?
So sometime around like 95 or 96, I started working with my friend Brian Soller, who I met in a Super Nintendo emulator chat room on IRC. And we worked on several different incarnations of the game, PC, DOS, Windows 95. And eventually we started working on a Game Boy version and then a Game Boy Color version. And they weren't the same. We started over for the Game Boy Color version. Around that time, I was a senior in high school, and I was about to graduate, and I sent a build of the game to, what was it, gbcdojo.com, which was that
was one of the offshoots of Nintendo Joe, I think, right?
Yeah. And are they still around?
Yeah, Nintendo Joe's still around. I have some buddies over there, and part of our little Nintendo enthusiast website crew. They're one of the few Nintendo sites that predate Nintendo World Rapport, because I think they were mid-90s, and then we used to be Planet GameCube, and we started off in 99.
Oh, okay. I should get in touch with them sometime. Anyway, I sent them a build, and they said, this is cool. We, aren't going to like review your homebrew game, but you should talk to this guy, Mike Micah, who works at, then it was Digital Eclipse, who was a big developer of licensed games for Game Boy Color. And so Brian and I both ended up getting jobs there. It was really kind of weird because I said, hey, can I come work for you guys? And they said, yes, you can come down, sight unseen, no interview or anything. And then my mom was like, no, you've got to go to college. So I went to college for a year, and then my photography professor pulled me aside and he said, you're a good photographer, but you should drop out of college right now and go make video games. So I did. And, mom didn't have a choice at that point. And so I moved from Missoula to Oakland, and that's how I got my start, and made my first video game was Little Nicky for Game Boy Color, based on the Adam Sandler movie.
I might have played that game.
I think I have it on my shelf, actually. It's not worth finding. Oh, no, wait, I do have it. Hold on. Yep, I found it. Oh,
we
boy.
lost our guest momentarily. Yeah, that is certainly. I mean, that movie's better than Pixels, so it's got that going for it.
Yeah.
So then, I'm trying to think if I played that or not. What kind of game was it? A platformer or?
Yeah, it was a platformer. Can you see the back of the box at all? Oh, shiny. There was levels where you do platforming, and then I made all the mini games.
Yeah, it looks like there's a basketball thing on the back.
Yeah,
from that
yeah. I
classic
didn't.
scene.
That was actually a level, and yeah, it was. Oh, includes exclusive Adam Sandler voice samples.
Oh wow, that probably sounded
Um,
great on the Game Boy Color.
it wasn't as bad as you might think, but yeah, not super great. And
So what else did you work on at Digital Eclipse?
let's see, 102 Dalmatians for Game Boy Color, which I don't have a copy of. I did mini games for that also. I basically ripped off the memory card game in Super Mario 3. Um, and then the other mini game was a color matching game, because keep in mind this is for little kids.
Yeah.
And it was literally the Photoshop palette selector and like a target color, and so I recreated it on a Game Boy, and it was terrible, but I guess kids liked it, maybe. And then after that, let's see, Spyro Season of Ice for Game Boy Advance. I had perfect timing because I'd learned to do Game Boy Color, and I got into the industry like 6 months before the Game Boy Color was completely obsolete forever.
So you got to prove your mettle, being like, "Hey, I can do this cool Game Boy Color stuff," and then you could stick around.
Yeah, and I had to relearn C because I'd been doing assembly for a couple of years. But anyway, so let's see, Spyro, X-Men. I did some work on a Rayman game. I did a ton of, licensed video games, movies, and stuff.
And then that was all at Digital Eclipse. You didn't jump around to other companies at all, or?
That was all in 2 years.
Oh wow!
Yeah, we were busy people there. It was, and actually, I was there literally 2 years to the day, and then I decided that I needed to have a life, and I left for a bit. Went back to Montana, met my wife, who's sitting off camera and wants absolutely nothing to do with being on the internet. I started doing mobile games, remotely. I was working for a Finnish game studio called Sumea, and did like Pitfall and stuff on mobile phones. Then they got bought by Digital Chocolate, Trip Hawkins' company.
Oh yeah,
like
no. Is Digital Chocolate even still around? Like I remember when that started, and I remember a couple games coming out of them, but that was about it.
Yeah, I don't think it's even technically still around anymore. Like Trip, I think, left several years ago, like maybe 5 even. They bounced around doing mobile stuff. Then they never really got their footing doing iPhone stuff and started doing Facebook stuff, I think. And then I think they went back to iPhone, and I don't think they exist anymore, but I could be wrong. I mean, I was only there for about a year. It was around the time somebody high up in the company said that it wasn't a game company, that I said, okay, well then I don't work here. And I went back to go work for Backbone Entertainment, which was Digital Eclipse, one merger later, and did Gauntlet DS, which
cool.
never came.
Yeah, no, I've heard a lot about that game and have always wanted to know more about it.
Oh,
because it seemed like it was really awesome, because it had voice chat and stuff with it too, and then like I think Mike Michael was talking about it on IGN a while ago, talking about how it was going to be this groundbreaking online game. But I'll shut up and let you talk about it since you actually worked on it.
Yeah, so I actually went to join Backbone to be to start the project. I wrote the first line of code in it.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and for about 9 months, I was the de facto lead programmer on it. The goal was to make a game that was 3D on both screens with voice chat, with basically the 3DS thing where you get the friends with the Wi-Fi. That I do it at every convention. I can't remember what it's called now. All of a sudden.
Oh God, I'm blanking on it too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you did the friend codes, but there was a way to do it without friend codes that people could kind of circumvent it, but I forget what that was.
Yeah. Anyway, let's see. Internet multiplayer, voice chat. We had like a laundry list of things that we had to accomplish for it, and we didn't accomplish all of those things, and so Nintendo didn't end up publishing it. And then that's the short version of how the game, didn't end up coming out. At least that's as I recall it. I was only there for the first 9 months of the project because I lived in San Jose and Backbone's in Oakland, and so it was a very shitty commute. And after a while, yeah. I was working 3 days a week in the office in Oakland and 2 days a week at home. And then corporate policy became that everybody had to work every day in the office. And I was like, I can't. So then I quit that to go work on mobile games again. And I did that. It was like the 3-year anniversary or 4-year anniversary of when I'd left Digital Eclipse. And it turned out to be Mike Micah's birthday. And I was like, oh, I quit your game company on your birthday twice. I'm an asshole. We're still good friends to this day, but I did feel like a turd for that. But yeah, Gauntlet was fun, man. I really enjoyed making that game. Like, it's still the only like large scale 3D project I've worked on. I mean, I've done a lot of games that have 3D elements, but as I'm sure you can tell, I'm more into retro stuff.
As am I, which is more or less why we're here. So
rad. But it was fun, and I've been meaning to dig it out and play it again one of these days, because I got like the final build, and it's not too hard to find, I think, on the internet by now.
No, I think I've seen on unsavory places that it's out there.
Yeah. I suppose I shouldn't be endorsing that. So don't do it, but I don't care.
Nudge.
And,
so then, when did you wind up kind of, I guess, forming Muteki Corporation?
So about a year into the mobile company that I went to after Backbone, I got a message from Brian saying, "Hey, I'm leaving." Oh, he was also at Backbone again at that time. He worked on Gauntlet also. He said, "I'm leaving too. We're gonna." Him and one of the guys from Digital Chocolate decided to start a studio. They wanted to know if I'd like to be the third founder, and I said, "Nope. I have a good thing going here, and I'm getting paid a lot, and I love you guys, but I'm not gonna risk anything right now." And so for about a year, they did that, and I did my thing at the other place. And then the iPhone came out, and they wanted to keep making Java J2ME games, and went out of like business immediately. Bam, over, done. There's no way the iPhone will be a big deal. It's one phone. Yeah. So I'd made my career porting games to 200 different stupid little pieces of, and the iPhone
just wiped everything out.
Yeah, and so they went out of business, and I, by way of a couple other uninteresting places, at least in this conversation, uninteresting, I went to go work with Brian, and so I was the third guy, and we did a bunch of stuff for. They were called NG Moco at the time. They're now DNA.
Oh yeah, they did. What was that? Rolando, right?
Yeah, I worked on Rolando.
Rolando was awesome. That was I think the first game. Like, I was the kind of person, much like that mobile company, where the iPhone came out and was like, games on that, no way. Then someone showed me Rolando. I was like, oh, this could be good. There's potential here if you make a game for the system.
Yeah, we did. Let's see. We actually did their very first game, which was Maze Finger, which was just a maze thing. But it was, it was flashy and it was cool, and it was quickly done. And then what was it? Topple 2 Some other guy did Topple 1. I guess they didn't like working with him, so we did Topple 2. Sorry to the first guy. And just a bunch of other stuff. And at some point, we decided we wanted to make some of our own games because we'd played World of Goo and realized that that's a thing that people could do, make their own games. And so I made a game called The Battle of Pirate Bay, which was like, did you ever play Flight Control?
Yeah, played a lot of Flight Control.
It was like inverse flight control, where the object was to hit things instead of not hit things. The idea being you get your ship close enough to other ships and you'd fire on them and they'd die. And it was fun, and started working on a sequel. But halfway through production on it, my dad passed away from cancer. It wasn't unexpected. He'd had, 2 years of lung cancer. Never a smoker, but he was a sculpture professor at the University of Montana. And I think he inhaled one too many clay dusts. Dad passed away, and I lost all interest in just about everything.
I guess I thankfully can't relate yet, but I've had to deal with a bunch of grandparents pass away in the past few years, and seeing my parents with that's not a fun thing. So my heart goes out to
hoping you don't have to deal with it for, another 20 or 30 years at least. But so Dad passed away. I realized that all I had to show for myself was a bunch of licensed games, and mobile stuff that no one cared about. So for like 6 months, I barely, functioned as a human being. It was just so depressing. Then on April Fool's Day 2011, my dad's birthday, we were going to go to my friend's house for a barbecue to celebrate. My mom was in town, everybody. We were going to remember Dad. But first we had to sell a laptop to somebody on Craigslist. As you can imagine, selling a laptop on Craigslist meant we got robbed at gunpoint that night. And so I was just like, I was terrified. I knew it was a fake gun because I'm from Montana and I can tell, I know my guns. I'm not a big gun guy, but I recognize, real guns versus fake guns. But he had it in my wife's back, and I wasn't going to push the issue. The guy punched me in the back of the head, and I was like, I turned around and was like, really, dude? Because he didn't punch very hard. They got arrested like 3 days later. But the first night, I could not sleep at all. So I'd been working on a table view in my engine to do a spreadsheet application. And I just stayed up working on this table view, and it was 2-dimensional, and I wanted to test it. And I thought, well, what would be the best way to test this is just put tiles in it, graphics, make it look cool. And I ended up building, the overworld for Dragon Fantasy in my spreadsheet tool. And I had it up and running by morning. I had about 25% of an RPG put together. And the story that I'd written as a kid had a character in it named Ogden who was based on my dad. He was a minor character, but there he was. And so I did that. Anyway, so I worked on it in secret for like 3 weeks because Brian and I had one rule. Brian and Ryan and I should say, at Muteki. The one rule was no RPGs. They're too damn hard to build. So, because we'd failed numerous times as kids. And so I worked on it in secret until I finally was at the point where I had like the first 2 hours of the game. Basically everything up to the part where you get on the boat. And it was all not done, but it was functional and working, and you could play it. And I showed it to Brian, and he looked at it and he frowned, and he was like, well, I guess we're not going to do Pirate Bay 2 anytime soon. And so we started doing that, and it came out like 5 months later on iPhone. just the first chapter. That was all that existed. Monsters were random battles. It was 8-bit mode only. It was really ridiculously, unforgivingly hard. And it was slow because it was written in a spreadsheet. It ran at like 15 frames a second, but nobody cared. And the game actually did pretty good. And then how did this happen? We got invited to go to Minecon to show the game. I think there was maybe like an indie game sign up form, and we got accepted. And so we went, and by that point we'd done 3 chapters, the 3 canonical chapters of the game. And on the airplane there, I decided I'd make a Minecraft chapter as a joke to show Notch. And so at the show, at the time, I thought Minecraft was the domain of 40-year-old guys in their basement, playing video games. Because I mean, I was 30 and I was obsessed with Minecraft. I loved it. I still very much like Minecraft. And then they opened the doors on the first day, and like 150,000 million like 10-year-olds come screaming in. I was like, oh shit, none of these kids are gonna want to play an 8-bit RPG. But then they came over and they saw the Minecraft thing, and they thought it was Pokemon. And I was like, oh, thank God Pokemon hasn't advanced in a decade. It still looks the same. And so kids played it. They liked the main story. They liked the Minecraft thing. So I went over and I talked to Notch and Carl Manna, and I said, hey, can I do this without you guys suing me? And they said, sure. So we did. And then while we were there, Sony showed up, and Sony was like, hey, we'd like to talk to you guys. And we were like, oh, really? But we didn't believe them, so we didn't. Like, we just kind of thought maybe they wanted to talk, but it wouldn't go anywhere, so we didn't make a big deal about it. And it wasn't until PAX East.
That was before Sony's indie strategy was really that well known. It was when, because you guys were, that was pre that E3 event where they had like, whatever, like 8, 9 indie developers on stage. This was still when it was kind of like, lol, PS3.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, so we didn't even think it was a possibility until PAX East, our first PAX East, which was, we weren't in the Indie Mega booth. It was the first time the Indie Mega booth had existed, and it was like right over from us. And we were stuck behind the Riot Games booth, which was good and bad.
So damn loud.
Yeah, it was very loud. And there was a lot of people standing in line, and they were standing in line right in front of our booth. So they were looking at our game, but they weren't playing it because they weren't going to get out of line. But Sony came by again. They said, come see us at, in Redwood City or Redwood Shores. Yeah. And we went down there, and they did that. And I just realized I'm actually touching the Vita dev kit that they gave us. So here it is. The little thing says Muteki on it, so I don't get it confused with the ones from Choice Provisions. And that's how Dragon Fantasy 2 happened. We showed them, like, we wanted to build closer to what our original goal had been back in the 90s of making Final Fantasy 6 and Chrono Trigger and Secret of Mana having a baby. So they said, well, we'll put you on the pub fund. We'll give you a guarantee of a certain amount of money, which we were like, oh my God, that's amazing. It didn't mean we got money then. It meant we'd get it after the game went live. So we continued to eat ramen for, another couple of years until that game came out. But we did book 1 first on the Vita and PS3, and it was good. It worked, There were some bugs, but it was like people liked it and they played it and it sold well, and we were super happy. But then book 2, we bit off way more than we could chew. The game came out. We had to get it out for the sale, so we had a date that we had to hit, and we hit it like a car going 90, brick wall. So it came out at the same time as Diablo 3 and Grand Theft Auto 5. And we sold nothing. Like, we went out of business immediately. I mean, we're not, Muteki's not out of business, but day-to-day operations ceased immediately.
Now I feel really horrible for not buying Dragon Fantasy Book 2, because I remember hearing the first response about it being like, oh, it was really buggy. I was like, yeah, I'll wait for a sale. Like a jerk.
Yeah. Yeah, you...
I was there day one for Book 1 on Vita, though. That was I really enjoyed that game. It was the thing with Book 1 is that there were a lot of elements about it that was, I would assume, might have been intentional, that it had that kind of slow build where it is just one guy for the first chapter, and the random battle is kind of harkened back to these old style of RPGs, and that's why I still haven't gone back to play. I got it on 3DS. And I've been wanting to dive into it, and I'm excited to, because it seems like a lot of the updates that you've made to the Wii U and the 3DS, I guess the Volumes of Westeria version, have improved a lot of the things that, even though I enjoyed Book 1, there were still some things I'm like, man, I wish this was a little more modern.
Yeah, definitely. So the biggest thing that we did for that was add the visible monsters. But I mean, like, the idea was Chapter 1 was supposed to be Dragon Quest 1, in terms of gameplay. One guy, one monster, simple. Every time you go over a bridge, it gets harder, that sort of thing. And Chapter 2 was supposed to do, build on it like Dragon Quest 2, and 3 was based on the Tolun chapters from Dragon Quest 4, the one where you're the merchant.
Yeah,
but I changed it.
Those are my favorite parts of Dragon Quest 4. I mean, really, the whole game reminded me of Dragon Quest 4 because of that chapter structure and how you're going from these different characters, and then they're joining all together near the end and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that really was like the big idea for it. I ended up focusing on that type of game design because Dragon Quest 4 really is, like, it's my favorite in the series. I know a lot of people like 3 better, but 4 is my jam.
For me, it's all about 5. Although I think 4 and 9 would be my second and third. I'm not sure in what order.
5 is very good. I actually just played all the way through it on my iPhone because they put them all. By the way, did you notice? I can't remember which one it was, but when one of the Dragon Quest games came out on iPhone, somebody typoed the actual name of the game.
And it was Dargon Quest. Yeah, that was wonderful.
So here's a fun little Easter egg for your viewers that I don't think anybody's noticed on the 3DS yet. But 1 out of 256 times when you start the game, it'll say Dargon Fantasy.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, that is out now, and you can play it, and you should.
It's cross-buy. It's cross-buy. Why not? You can get it on your 3DS and your Wii U for one low price.
Yes. And I'm working on Book 2. I've been working on them for a very long time. Basically ever since Book 2 came out for the Vita. I'd been working on a 3DS version. The company, we basically went out of business, but I kept going on it in my spare time. And honestly, that ended up being the best thing in the world for me. I'd been working at Muteki for 6 years. And there were 4 of us there. And so we never got to take vacations because if any one of us left, the company basically ground to a halt.
Yeah.
And, so it ended up being fantastic because I went to Choice Provisions, and suddenly I'm working in an indie video game studio, but it was 5 times bigger than mine, or 4 or 5, I don't know. Anyway, it was bigger, but not so much bigger that it was uncomfortable. And they basically just let me do what I do, I took the Dragon Fantasy engine, got it running super nice on 3DS, but I used it to make Wodave. Have you played Wodave?
Yes, that's on the Dragon Fantasy engine?
Yes, it's the Dragon Fantasy engine. for a while, I didn't end up shipping it, but for a while, if you entered the Konami code while it was paused, it would switch to Dragon Fantasy characters. But it didn't look right, so I took it out. And now I'm working on Space Dave, which is the sequel to Woe Dave, also in the Dragon Fantasy engine. And so, I spent all that time working on the Dave games to build the engine up and make it more, suitable to the 3DS. And then they said, hey, we want to publish both Dragon Fantasy games. How long will it take you to fix them up? And I said, book 1 we can do immediately. Book 2, I'll need just a little time. So, I fixed everything. I spent time like going through GameFAQs forums and reading just awful reviews.
Yeah,
talking about bugs.
you know what? If you were to ask me, should I go read the GameFAQs forums about my game? I would say no. Stay the hell away from there.
Yeah, so I read the bottom half of the internet, as they call it, and you'd think I killed somebody's mom with with the bugs, but I did what I could when I released it initially. There's just only so many hours in a year.
And especially when you're going up against a hard deadline with that game. Yeah. That's the kind of the unfortunate reality of game development sometimes, is that things are out of your control no matter how much you want the game to be perfect.
Yeah. And, realistically, a small team, Chrono Trigger was made by like 35 people or something like that, I remember reading. And it was over the course of a couple of years. And we did Dragon Fantasy 2 with a company that had 4 full-time people, one of which was 100% on the game. That was me. Kevin James, who's the art director, who was on it most of the time. Bill Schmidt, who was the producer, who was basically writing, the extra quest dialogue and stuff. And he was working on it like maybe 25% of the time. And then every other person who contributed to it, including Dale North, who did the soundtrack for the second game, who was the editor-in-chief of Destructoid at the time, he did it for free in his spare time. And it's an amazing soundtrack. And I think, I don't know for certain, but I'm pretty sure the soundtrack made way more money than the game did, because he did it for free, but he got the soundtrack rights. And anyway, all the bugs are fixed now. I've tweaked the story so it's easier to understand for people who didn't play the first game. We've submitted it to lot check once already, and we're working. It's going through QA now, and I am just tremendously excited to get it out for the 3DS and the Wii U, because
that was when you guys in Choice Provisions, when you made the announcement about both Dragon Fantasy games coming out, I was like, oh wait, they're gonna fix up Book 2? I can't wait.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So get excited because it's fixed.
Yay!
And some of the things in that were broken. Like there's a treasure box that you couldn't get to, and somebody messaged me about it, and I was like, oh, I forgot that I put that there. I wanted that to be an important treasure, and I just forgot it existed. And he was so mad at me. Like, I paid $15 for this. I'm like, I'm sorry. I tried so hard. We passed Sony certification. I thought the game would not be broken. But now the game's been through QA for quite a while now, and I'm very excited for it. It feels like it's a brand new game to me. I added a ton of stuff. There's every scene that got cut is in there now. Well, not every scene. Some of them just weren't that good, but but all the important ones that I really had wanted to have in there are in. There's a giant crab boss that you fight now. And it's all animated, like the claws like move smoothly, you know, because they're rotating and scaling instead of just a ton of frames of animation that are kind of chunky looking. You know, it's pretty dang close to what I wanted to build when I was 14.
That's
So
incredible.
Yeah, I'm super happy about it, and I hope everybody likes it, because I will have put 21 years into it by the time, which is so sad. But yeah,
So
and it'll also be coming to Steam, you know, PC, Mac, and Linux, and at some point, you know, it'll be on Muteki to do it, but we will update the PlayStation versions of the game also. But that's going to take a while because nobody's paying us to do it, and
that's a labor of love there.
Yeah, Brian works for Microsoft now. You know, not in the games department either. He works on Outlook Mobile, I think. So he's busy. I'm busy, but you know, yeah, very excited.
So I guess with Dragon Fantasy 2 kind of just going through the final stages, what's next for you? Or is it just working on Space Dave and other Choice Provisions projects, or will Dragon Fantasy live again?
Depends on how Book 2 sells, which will be called the Black Tome of Ice, by the way. I still call them Book 1 and Book 2, but they have official names.
A little jazzier.
But yeah, a little jazzier, you know, and at some point, somebody told me that indie games with the number 2 in the title never sell. And, oh, okay. But I'm working on Space Dave. Very much enjoying that. I actually just started the 3DS port on Tuesday last week, and it's now fully up and running. And I suspect the Wii U should work now also, but I haven't tested it. But I'm you know, I'm doing that. I'm enjoying that. There's been some talk about a big Choice Provisions project to do with, you know, that engine after Space Dave, and I would be very excited to do that thing, and I will remain incredibly vague about it. But then, yeah, I hope to do Book 3 someday, because Book 2 ends, you know, I wouldn't call it a cliffhanger. I'd just say it ends with a very open ending that says, hey, more stuff will happen. And
well, if it's still inspired by Chrono Trigger, just make it like Chrono Cross, where everyone's dead.
Yeah, no, not doing. But you know, I still want to be the N64 RPG that I waited for my whole childhood.
Still waiting for that one, by the way. It's been 15 years. Still, Quest 64. What was Quest 64 the closest thing to an RPG that came out on the Nintendo 64? That's depressing.
Yeah.
That game isn't good.
There were a couple other things, kind of, but
Ogre Battle was very good, but that was more strategy RPG than.
I got that one on my shelf too somewhere.
I'm not going to get up and find that one though.
I did. Someone in the chat commented on the slime controller that's up on the top of your bookshelf there, and that slime controller is wonderful. I think that's the PlayStation one, right?
Yeah. The only problem with it, it's a great PlayStation 2 controller, but it's made out of this old type of plastic that if it got hot, it turned sticky. So
that's just a problem with all of them. I was at a game convention like a month or two ago, and I saw one of those, and I saw it from afar and was like, I want that, and I picked it up, and it was all gross and sticky, and I was like, I don't know where this has been, and then I left.
Yeah, it wasn't somebody's disgusting leavings. It was just, which is unfortunate because it's a weird shape, and you kind of cup it like you're fondling something, but it actually is really comfortable. It's like, it feels like you're communing with the video game. But yeah, I love that thing. I wish it wasn't gross and sticky. And you see I've got a couple other slimes up there and a sake bottle that looks like a slime. and a bunch of Dragon Quest stuff and toys aplenty. It's my fortress of solitude.
There is another thing in the chat, a comment on. I understand there's maybe a secret in the menu of Dragon Fantasy for Nintendo. Would that be the Dargon Fantasy that you mentioned before? Or is there something else?
So there's that, which is just random. There's no way to make it happen. You just kind of got to start the game over and over again. It's really more of an Easter egg. It's like not super exciting. You can just imagine it with Dargon instead of Dragon, and there you go. But in the Steam version of the game, it's only in the Steam version because I didn't want to write shaders for it for every platform. But if you enter the Konami code, I think, yeah, it's the Konami code. If you enter the Konami code in the settings screen, it'll switch to Game Boy graphics.
Oh, that's awesome.
Everything becomes green scale, and it looks really Game Boy-ish in 8-bit mode, and it looks like a weird hybrid of Super Nintendo and Game Boy in 16-bit mode. I can't remember if I've ever actually told anybody that the Konami code is how you get that, but here you go. But it's unfortunately it's only the Steam version because I didn't have time to make it work on everything else. It was April Fool's Day. I added it, and it was fun. It was a joke, really. Works in WoDave too, I think. Basically, everything I do from now on is going to have that Game Boy mode built into it. So
that's wonderful. I look forward to that. Is there, and the last question for the chat is there any chance of a European release for Dragon Fantasy?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We just need to get the manual translated into French, I guess, before we can do a European release. Oh, cool. And so it's purely on, it's like all bureaucratic stuff at this point. The game's ready to go. I want to give it to you right now. And it's out of my hands, really. I will tell you this, though. I will go into the office tomorrow and I'll say, yo, where's that French manual? Let's get this thing done. As far as I know, the only one you have to actually translate is French. Like the Germans don't care. And
everyone else will adapt except for the French, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to actually translate the game to every language on Earth. And if enough people ask me to, I totally will. But I'm assuming that your commenter is asking about the English European release for.
Or else they'd be watching this and being like, "What are they saying? I like the slime controller, but I have no idea what they're saying."
Yeah. All I know are the words, "Is Dragon Fantasy coming out in Europe anytime soon?" Yeah, so yes, and I I'm gonna push really hard for Dragon Fantasy 2 to be simultaneous or at least closer. I know with Dragon Fantasy Book 1 and 2 for the PlayStation, it was like 2 years before it came out in Europe, and that was because we were effectively, not literally out of business, but Muteki does not operate day to day anymore.
You guys are all just doing your own thing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm basically doing the exact same thing I was doing at Muteki, which is why we don't say it's out of business, because we're still doing that business. It's all Choice Provisions has been truly amazing, letting me basically do whatever I want to make video games happen. And, I'm so incredibly lucky, and it was like, in a lot of ways, my studio going under was the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm so much happier now working there, and they're just awesome people. Like,
yeah, they are.
You hear the terrible jokes that are coming out of that office all day. It's so fun. I mean,
and
obviously,
even how much that studio has grown, because I remember what Gaijin Games was basically just what, like Alex, Mike, and wasn't there a third guy?
might have been Danny, or it could have been Chris.
I think it was Chris.
Yeah,
Is he
yeah.
not there anymore? Because wasn't there one of the three guys isn't there anymore? I don't know.
Chris doesn't work there anymore, although he is working on our. I'm pretty sure we announced Laser Life, so I'm just going to talk about it.
I do think that was announced.
Yeah. That's like 99% sure. Exclusive, you heard it here first. Chris is working on the music for Laser Life, so we're all friends and stuff. And yeah, the studio's bigger than it used to be. It's this perfect little. It's everything I ever wanted Muteki to be, but I don't have to run it,
which is probably a great thing. Running things can be a drag if you're not of a certain build.
And yeah, I mean, not that I ran Muteki. Brian ran Muteki, but Brian wasn't happy about it either. So,
all right. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to impart to our viewers?
Well, please buy both games so that I can make you a third game. And I guess follow me on Twitter at Adam Rippon.
Okay, now I know. Actually, I've just been putting your name in. Now I actually know what your Twitter handle is. Whenever I've been tweeting about this.
And I don't know. I should mention we did an art contest in the Miiverse because I was just blown away by how responsive.
Miiverse is awesome.
It's so great. So a bunch of people made art, and we're going to announce winners probably tomorrow. Two of the judges have voted on them, and I just have to do it now. So it's all on me, and I'm going to do mine, and then we're going to pick a winner, and that winner is going to have a secret enemy in the game based on their art.
That's awesome.
And I think what we're going to do is in the 8-bit version, it will be exactly what they drew. And then, because, it's basically the right scale.
Yeah.
And then in the 16-bit version, we'll colorize it.
Awesome.
Maybe. I might decide not to colorize it and just leave it the same way, because it's kind of cool having like a weird, sketchy thing that doesn't quite look like anything else in this secret room. For fun. It'll be pretty neat. I'm excited about that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was great hearing your story, and I'm very excited to play a non-broken version of Dragon Fantasy Tomb of Ice and
the Black Tome of Ice.
The Black Tome of Ice.
Not the Tomb of Ice and Fire. That would be way too games.
I just had a moment where I said that. I'm like, no, that's Game of Thrones again. No.
It's a story about ice, and has a character named Arya, and it takes place in Westeria. Just no. Thanks a lot, George R.R. Martin. He
all you need to do is just convince people is that no one, everyone stays alive here. We're not killing your favorite characters. Don't worry. It's a safe place.
Yeah. I'm like the anti-George R.R. Martin. The funny thing is he actually hangs out in Missoula a lot for some reason. I think he might have been hanging out outside my high school going, Wisteria, huh? Aria, huh? I wonder if I can kill all of that kid's characters.
I would just like to picture him stroking his beard, cackling maniacally as he's writing.
Yeah. Well, when you got a beard, you have to. You just have to. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, now that we're done stroking our beards, I think that just about does it. So thank you so much. And for anyone who's watching, feel free to leave any comments below or wherever it is on the YouTube page. And if there's any other follow-up questions or something, you can hit up Adam on Twitter, or I'll look at the YouTube comments and ask him myself on Twitter or something like that.
Yep.
And thank you for watching Nintendo World Report, and see you all soon. Bye.
Maybe we'll do it again for Space Dave.
That would be awesome because Space Dave looks so rad. I feel like everything with Woe Dave and Space Dave, you just need to have rad somewhere in there. It just
Totally.
works out. Totally rad. Totally choice, right?
Totally choice. Yeah.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Have a good one.